Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It's Friday evening. It is 9 o'clock. Time to have a live stream. But first, as always, a little music. Enjoy.
We are all the heirs to Scotland, as a nation proudly stand. We will march beneath her banners to protect our ancient land. In the glens and cities, there on every street are the living heroes no army will defeat. Let our flag mean freedom and not a battle drum. To the world we bid a welcome in 1,000 different ways. We will toast to long lost friendships as we build our better days. In the glens and cities, there on every street are the living heroes no army will defeat. Let our flag mean freedom and not a battle drum. We are all the heroes of Scotland. We're a nation hand in hand. We will march beneath her banners to protect our ancient land. In the glens and cities, there on every street are the living heroes no army will defeat. Let our flag mean freedom and not a battle drum.
Good evening, friends. Unfortunately, my green screen isn't working properly. It's due to the fact that I've recently changed the overhead bulb, and it's just impossible to balance at the moment. I'll need to do something about it in the future. Now, we've got two of our three guests. We're waiting on young William to appear. I do have a very special mystery surprise guest this evening, and I'm not going to bring that guest on until our regular movie reviewers are here. So we're waiting on William, but I shall bring on our good friend Sensum. Good evening, Sensum. How are you, sir?
I'm very well, John. Hello, everybody. Hope everybody's well in the chat. Yeah, looking forward to this one. Really good film. I would imagine that Eki probably has a few points of view. The bleeding heart liberal um, boomer take on things, but even so, still a brilliant film. And if anybody in the chat hasn't seen it yet, 12 Angry Men, then I heartily recommend it.
Okay, doc. Good evening, Yeki. How are you, sir?
I'm doing okay. I don't know if you can hear Los Angeles happening in the background, but I'm
Yes,
well
we can.
otherwise.
Sounds like dogs, is it?
Yes, we have paper thin walls here in Los Angeles, so I
Oh
have the
dear.
luxury of hearing quite literally everything that happens around me.
You'll need to move to the country where you don't have paper thin mountains and forests.
My goal is to somehow find my way to a mountaintop.
Good for you. Good for you. I've got a special guest, as you probably heard me say, and I'd rather keep that special guest until our William arrives. And it's not
I
like,
did as soon as because sometimes William doesn't see things very quickly, so he'll dip into Telegram to
right.
just double check.
Uh-huh.
And so as soon as I received the link, I dropped into Telegram and left it with him there, just in case he double checks there. So hopefully he'll make it.
Well, he's in the chat now. Gents, I completely forgot about this. I've been snowed under with college. My apologies, lads. So he's there. We just need his presence here. And we'll be able to introduce my very special guest. And we'll take it from there. So, William, whatever you're doing, if you can, as soon as you're able, join us here in the live stream. And there's plenty of well-kent faces already in the chat, and I'd like to say good evening to all of you, and thanks very much to all the people who have written, who have been in touch, who have offered up prayers for me. I really do appreciate all of those positive thoughts. I don't know if I've mentioned before, but I'll mention it now. Toffee left an absolutely beautiful piece in the comment sections under one of my streams. I thought it was absolutely magnificent. I really did. I was quite taken back by it. So thanks very much for that one, Toffee. I don't know where you got it. It's so beautiful. What have we got? Where is he? I've not watched it, so I don't think I'll much use, brother. Will easily pop on to say hello if you want. Yeah, please pop on and say hello. I have an extra guest who is no longer extra now that you haven't seen the movie, William. So pop on and say hello. That won't do any harm. And I'll bring on her. Okay. No? No, you're not coming on then. Okay. Never mind, William. Okay, I'll bring on my special guest. Oh, I'll be in 10 minutes. Okay, doc. In the meantime, I shall bring on my special guest, who goes by the name of Magic Man. And there he is. Good evening, Magic Man.
Good evening. Hello, everyone. Thanks for having me.
Well, would you like to say a few words about yourself without doxing yourself for those who may not know who you are?
Well, I'm Mini Cartomancer, son to Cartomancer, to John. Have been all my life, oddly enough, and I'm a huge film fan. This particular film is easily one of the top 100 for me. It's very well, without going into too much depth, obviously at this point, but it's near perfect. It's near perfect. But yeah, I love films. I love science fiction. I'm a gamer. I still play video games. So yeah.
Thank you. Well, as I usually start the first question with, why did you pick this film? Well, as I picked this film, I shall answer my own question by saying it is, in terms of visuals, dialogue, characterization, it's as near perfect a film that I can think on in any genre at any time, including right up to date. And that's why I picked it, especially for somebody like William who had never seen it. I hoped that he would get a lot from the film, but I'm sure he'll get around to watching it sooner or later. So that's my reason for for choosing the film. But let me go to Eki. What was your initial impressions on the film, Eki, and had you seen it before?
No, I had not seen it before. I've known about it for quite some time, but for whatever reason, I never did watch it. I don't know why. Initial impressions. Very well executed and concise, which I did like. At times, in my own opinion, it came off as preachy is too strong a word. That's too strong a word. But there's an element of we know better than you, if that makes any sense. And even though I agreed with a lot of the themes involved within it, as you know, and Sensum already called me out on it in the very beginning. I've got my own views on it. I've got my own thought patterns on it, or whatever, and I'm sure everyone can guess. At the same time, all the qualifiers said, very solid execution. I liked the fact that they took their time with the subject matter. They didn't just rush scene to scene to scene. They didn't just rush from conflict to conflict. They took their time to think about it. I actually really appreciated that. So, in initial impressions, I would say really good execution. And that's
Excellent. Excellent. Sensum, I know you're going to be giving it glowing reports, but on you go anyway. Initial thoughts.
Well, it is an iconic film, and it's one that I have seen several times over. Probably as a youngster when I didn't understand it. Then when I was a little bit older, I did understand a little bit more. Like I say, pre-Eki, I probably would have watched it without any kind of rose tinted, with the usual rose tinted glasses on. However, post Eki, I was watching it. I literally was watching. I was thinking, oh yeah, this Eki will be going. Yeah. They've got to always portray them in this positive light, the bleeding heart, liberal boomer type sort of thing. But it is a great film, and it was. I didn't realize this until this time around. A couple of things I didn't realize was that it was produced by Henry Fonda and also the bloke who wrote the play. But the director was Sidney Lumet as well, which is I didn't know. I'd not recollected that. Obviously, I've seen many of Sidney Lumet's films since then. So that was a couple of things I hadn't realised before. But you have got an ensemble cast, but you can afford potentially to have an ensemble cast like that because it's all done in a couple of rooms, so there isn't any real sort of set or any, which is just because it's directly translated from the play, and it's ideal. And I would still say, irrespective of your views of the bleeding heart liberal angle, that kind of thing, the sort of the tension and the dialogue between all of the characters, because each character has a particular trait, don't they? Which we'll probably touch on as we go further in, and the interactions, not necessarily between the main protagonist and the main antagonist, which in this case would be Henry Fonda and Lee J. Cobb, but also the other supporting cast like Jack Klugman's in there, Jack Warner, Ed Begley's in there. So it's all relatively familiar names to people for roles that they played probably a little bit later on in their careers, with the exception, obviously, of say Henry Fonda and Ed Begley, obviously. It's just for me, it's a masterclass in how you can frame you've got 12 different people, and when you see the two of the individuals from that 12, their interaction is a completely different type of interaction to any other two in the cast. And it's a very, very cleverly done thing. And like I say, the storyline is, once again, the taken from a play. If you can't really say, in case people haven't watched it in the chat, which I know a couple haven't, but for me, it's a masterclass in dialogue, tension, and how the characters interact with one another.
I agree entirely. It's there's so many good things that you can say about it, and I'm sure we'll say a lot of them tonight. There are so few films that rank so highly when you consider the film as a whole rather than individual pieces of a film. But as a complete work, then there's very few can get near it, as far as I'm concerned. And I was speaking to my son about this, and I'd be interested to know who took part in the casting of it, apart from Henry Fonda himself, of course, and the director, because to choose such a cast wouldn't be easy either. To get the cast that could deliver such a performance, And there you go.
Well, the only thing I would say about that is that, just to very, before you pass it over, well, the only thing that I would say is people like Jack Klugman and Martin Balsam already were stage actors, so they predominantly were play actors. So, it wouldn't be too much of a leap of the imagination to imagine that the writer and the original sort of stage producer, knew of these people who, and it lent itself to the kind of acting that you would expect on a stage, because it is a very small set. It's a very close in, near to work. So, like I say, I don't know of a lot of work that Jack Klugman did before them in the movies, but he was a renowned, or well, I wouldn't say renowned, but prolific stage actor, as was Martin Balsam, and probably some of the other cast. So that's probably how that cast was assembled. But because it was such a great film, it became a leapfrog for those guys to subsequently go into the movies.
It was a career launcher for most of them, I would have said, in terms of individuality. Because, as you say, the conflict between Cobb and Henry Fonda is a showpiece for Lee J. Cobb himself. And I think that launches the rest of his career, to be honest. So what do you think then, Mr. Magic Man? Do you agree with what you've heard so far, or would you disagree or add to?
I would certainly agree. Obviously, it's designed to be a stage play on screen, with the constraints of the set, where it's effectively one room plus an adjoining bathroom and a doorway, which is basically the outside world, and then you have a one outside shot near the end. But apart from that, it's so tight, it's so well constructed that you go from the intense heat, the intense closeness of it. You then have the drama unfolding, the characters begin to break and what have you, and then there's a coming together at the end. But it's just fantastic that such a simple concept, and you've got this gripping drama for an hour and 40 minutes effectively, and it's just a joy to see. And you've got all these great character actors doing their thing, and you just go, oh yeah, that guy, oh yeah, that's Quincy, and it's just wonderful.
I think he likes it, folks. Okay, let's get back to Eke. Who would you say, Eke, if anyone, where was the weak character in it? And what I mean by weak is not as well defined or as well written as the other characters. Would you say there is one? And if there is one, who would it be for you?
Tough question, only because I have my personal opinions, and
Which is what we're hoping to get.
yeah. Okay, so I'm gonna go off of my actual thought patterns just for a moment. Cobb, actually, it's Cobb. The main antagonist is, because he's not technically an antagonist. It's simply that he's the last holdout for a guilty charge, and Cobb was juror number 3. And I didn't like that he basically had no reasoning. He had no rationale for it. And it seemed to me as though the way that everything was constructed, the problem was that he was unthinking, and he was simply saying nuh-uh, or no, or I disagree, or I'm not going to think about it, or whatever. And even though you do need to have a strong antagonist. Keeping in mind that Henry Ford's character, Henry Ford, good God, Fonda rather, apologies. Fonda's character, Henry Fonda's character, juror number 8, he was supposed to be the moral center of the movie. So
Yeah.
he needs to be the one that is clear thinking, who is able to discern fact from fiction, things that are plausible, implausible, so on and so forth, and do so in a level-headed manner,
Hmm.
keeping
Yeah.
in mind that, as was described more than once, this is a person's life on the line, and Cobb's character was basically, he was cavalier about the whole thing. He even said the phrasing, "You know how they are," something to that effect. You'll note, by the way, in the intro to the movie, that the young man who was on trial, who did they get to play that young man? That was an Ashkenazi. I don't know if anyone caught that. I don't know how many people decided to look at that, but there it is. And there's also within the first half hour, I think, they refer to those people, or you know how they are, or whatever.
Yeah.
Little known fact: all those gangster movies that were so popular from like the late 70s into the 90s, the mobster movies about
Hmm.
Italian gangsters or whatever, look into who they were based on. They were
Hmm.
not Italians. They were a different group entirely. And when they are referring to those people, when they're referring to criminal intent and behavior types, they're referring to the young man. Again, they hired, for one reason or another, an Ashkenazi. So when I think on Cobb and I think on his motivations and whatever, it's important to understand that the writer of this movie happened to be Ashkenazi. So he had a dog in the fight as to whether or not there should be, quote, prejudice, end quote, with regards to the person who was on trial. And that was a really big plot point, or a really big talking point, rather, near the end of the movie. And the impression that I got, honestly, this is my actual opinion, is that though you need to have a good protagonist antagonist conflict, the antagonistic element needs to be clearly defined. It needs to be believable, and I just didn't believe it. It fundamentally came down to nah, and I found that to be the weak link. And I was bummed out about that because it's like, well, dude, like we're talking about this again within the context of the film. This is a person's life on the line, and I wanted to see some good argumentation with regards to why someone would think that the person is guilty, and simply saying I'm relying on this testimony or that testimony. What is it? The woman who wore eyeglasses and whatnot. It always ended up being a matter of we can simply tease out information. We can ask questions and then slowly unravel. And I get that that's the point of the film. I do get that that is the point of the film. I just wanted to see something a little more strong with regards to the antagonistic element. So that's my actual that's my own opinion. If I was going to say with regards to your original question, which was, are there any characters that lack detailing, that lack a rounded character that we can actually comprehend and understand? Actually, I would say like 5 of the jurors were basically the exact same character over and over and over again. The only ones that were proper characters were, I forget he was the sports coach. He also played the detective in Psycho 1962 a couple
Oh
years
yeah, yeah,
later.
yeah.
He was a well-rounded character. Cobb, he had elements of a well-rounded character. The guy with the funny voice, the high-pitched voice, I actually liked that guy for some reason. He was a voice actor for Disney for a while, around about that time. But at the same time, there are also several where it's just like, okay, this is a guy that exists, and he has to say yay or nay or whatever. Oh yeah, like that. What was it? The not Wall Street. He was involved in like business and propaganda or something, and he kept putting his glasses off and on. He was the sort of handsome-looking fellow with the dark hair and the
Yeah,
chiseled
yeah.
jaw.
Use the cigarettes holder.
I think so. I think
Yeah,
so.
yeah. He's like a marketing type.
Yeah, marketing. That's he was into marketing. That's right. Like there were several characters where there was an element of discussion about who they were, but yeah, basically the majority of it was just between like 5 or 6 characters, and the other ones were, I don't want to say ancillary, but they were more supporting. To say which one was the least well-rounded, it's like, well, I guess take your pick. There's like 3 or 4 where it's just like they exist and that's it. If you look on the Wikipedia page, there are 4 names that they don't even have entries on them. Tom Gorman, James Kelly, John Savoca, and Walter Stalker. Well, he was the elevator clerk, bailiff, defendant, judge. Okay, yeah, fine. But like, as you get near the end, like, Edward Begley,
Mm-hmm.
you know, uh, who's he, Joseph Sweeney? Oh, he was the old man. That's right.
Yeah.
But yeah, like several of them were just kind of like, oh yeah, like the Jack Warden's character, the guy who was basically like 1961 uh, from Family Guy. They make fun of him, Quigley.
Mm.
Yeah, like Quagmire rather. Yeah, like I don't know. I feel like there were several of them where they were just there to be supporting. So okay, yeah. Now that I've yammered on, basically, I would say that weirdly enough, my big disagreement, my big problem with characterization is actually with the antagonist. That's it. Okay, all right. I'm sorry about that. All right.
Okay. How about you, Stenson? How do you feel about any weak characters, weak in that writing sense? Did you find any, or would you agree with what our friend Ek is saying, or disagree? If you get different people you put forward, if any.
No, I mean, there were obviously sort of the main rankers, which, in my opinion, were Fonda, Cobb, Begley, and Balsam. They were sort of the 4 main, in my opinion, they were the 4 main glue, if you like. But all of the other roles were, for different reasons, were equally impressive, albeit not the sort of the top rankers. But I think one of the things that they did manage to, which is something that Eki was pointing out there, was that they did try very hard, and I think this was probably a facet of the writing. So either the drama for the play, the playwriting, or if it was a book. I don't know if it was a novel originally, or if it was a play that was written, before anything else. Was to have each of the 12 people have completely distinct characteristics and traits. So, Clubman was sort of he was the bloke who really didn't want to be there. He was the bloke who got roped in, but if he could have found a way out, he would have happily sort of taken the way out. you then had the sort of the Mr. Stats, the guy with the glasses on, whose name I do remember him because he is a very familiar actor, because he was in things like well,
It's Robert Webber is the name that you're looking
Robert Webber, that's it. He's been in many, many things. He was in that one with the one that sticks in my mind was in his later years where Gene Hackman, I think, was playing the president, and he was having an affair with Robert Webber character's wife, and old Clint Eastwood was a bloody jewel thief, and he
Oh,
was
yeah.
hiding in a closet. He was in that one. I think he also was in one of the Creep Show ones where he was fascinated with cockroaches. He wanted to get rid of these cockroaches all the time. That's him as well. But yeah, but they all had different traits. But the key for me was that even though they were completely or put in a place to be completely distinct and unique types of character to sort of span the people who were in the would have been in the audience in effect.
Yeah.
When you see their own little interactions between one another, each one has a different sort of feel to it, a different kind of, you got the two guys who, like, when Warden and Balsam have a few words, it's more like, just two, they're not talking about the case of just like two blokes interacting with one another. When you've got Pencil, the weedy guy with the glasses, and the other bloke we've just spoken about, Robert Webber, when they have any kind of, it's more technical. So it's the sort of the dynamics within the dialogue as a whole for each one of those little interactions, and then you can see the group sway from Cobb's sort of persona over to the Henry Fonda persona, the convincing and the actually, yeah, now that you come to mention that, it was, I once again, I've seen it many, many times, and each time you watch a film, you see something new, and like I say, with a more critical lens on, I respect the film even more, if anything, if I'm being honest.
And how about you, Mr. Magic Man? Who would you pick out, if any, a weak character?
Well, if you say weak characters, obviously that's dependent upon the writer giving that character dialogue. So in terms of dialogue, probably the weakest character is Juror 11, George Vekovic. He's got very little to say. It's almost as if he's not there. The Ed Begley character, obviously he's very loud at the start, but he has one point to make and he hammers it home until the room rightfully shuts him up, and then you don't hear anything from him at all. So I would definitely go with Juror 11 in terms of the weakest character. But when he does speak, he at the time he does add a level of agreement to Fonda's points in defence of the boy that's been accused of the murder. So I would say him. I would say him.
Would you agree with what Eki was saying about the boy who was up for the charge of murder? Would you agree with what he was saying? Or have you got different thoughts about him?
Well, with regards to the character, obviously you only see him on screen for a couple of seconds. With that, you either think there's a frightened little boy or someone that's hiding something from his emotionless state. As to anything deeper within it, I wasn't aware of anything with that, with the connection with the writer. So that's news to me. So that was interesting to hear.
Okay. Okay, doke. So how about switching to soundtrack? What have we got to say about the soundtrack then, Sensum? Anything?
Pretty minimalist, keeps out of the way, accents certain points when, when they realise there's something's amiss, like, the woman couldn't possibly have seen, or, when because they get that little experiment, yeah, you stand at this end of the room,
No.
you stand at that. So there's a little, as soon as his realization that he, for all these Mr. Stats and Mr. Figures and Mr. Perfect, nice little accent on the music there, like, not so much a shammer, in other words, wah, 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 but almost a,
Yeah.
But yeah, it was the fact that the music were, you didn't really realize that there was any music there because it kept out of the way, because the strength was in the dialogue. So the music was just used to accent, little pieces where people's opinions were turning, or realizations, which is exactly what you want in that kind of a production. Once again, in the drama, in the stage play, there wouldn't, I don't believe, would have been any, music. There might have been Foley, the odd bit of Foley, so sound effects or whatever, but I don't think there would have been music. So in order to keep that feeling, but without being so stark of a little bit of background ambience that it became oppressive, I just thought it was there as a supporting role. Obviously, the music as it starts, it's a little bit sort of sadness combined with ominous sort of thing, which is what you would expect. And then, the little play out at the end, little fanfare, little exit stage left, literally, sort of bit of music, and when they're walking out with the jackets to go into the court again, that's, you don't need any more than that, do you?
No, not really. Would you agree with that, Magic Man, about the music?
Oh yeah, definitely. It's minimal, and then when it's used, it fits the tone and the setting. It has that um, feeling of where it's similar to like Streetcar Named Desire soundtrack, where it just hits the right spot. Unlike that film, there's much less music, but it fits the time. It definitely fits the time. But the use of the sound effects is far more prominent, and has a bigger role to play than music.
Would you agree with that, Eke?
It's gonna sound kind of bad. I don't remember the music at all.
Yeah. Well, maybe that's a good thing then, eh?
Yeah, I guess so. I'm not sure. Weirdly enough, the only thing that I remember is their use of rain. I loved the when they looped in the rain noises. I like
Right.
that part a lot.
Of course, folks, there's something very interesting about that whole rain thing. Does anyone know what it is, or is it just me that knows, Mr. Smart Alec? Yeah.
I'm gonna go smart Alec.
You know what it is?
No, no, I don't.
You don't. Right. So you're going to leave it up to me. Well, what happens is before that rain starts, the room's a particular size. And when the rain starts, the room gets smaller physically. They make the room smaller as the drama goes along. It's very small. You hardly notice it, but it's there. The room's getting smaller, increases the tension, reduces the space available between each character, and just lifts the thing up. Uh, Interesting use of a set to
That's
do that.
interesting. I didn't notice that.
No, but you're not meant to, of course. The only reason I know about it is because I read about it. I remember reading material on this film years and years ago, and that was one of the things that came up, which I thought was incredibly interesting that they did that, and how effective it was, because you don't notice until the characters are next to one another. The other thing that happens is the set not only gets smaller, the windows actually get bigger. so you see more of that rain hitting the glass. Now, maybe that's the way rain in New York is. I don't know, but that's what was done. These two things were done at the same time. I always found it incredibly interesting and effective. So there you go, folks. Useless information about 10 Angry Men.
It's not useless at all. That means that the set was actually a character.
Yeah, it takes part in a sense, you know, and not a passive one either. If you think about it.
You think how big and important the fan in that room is. How the characters behave before the fan is switched on, and how they act after the fan is switched on. It literally cools everybody down, physically and mentally.
Yeah, well, it is that aspect as well, which is again, it's pretty subtle, but it's obviously there. What's his name? The character, the juror who keeps throwing the bits of paper at it. You know, he's got a particular attitude to the fan. But yeah, the fan does take part in it, as does those windows and the rain, etc., etc.
Yeah, that was Jack Warden. That was
Is that who
playing
that is?
yeah. He's sort of doing basketball shots and over the back, behind the back kind of stuff because he's bored.
Yeah. Telling us that he's missing this football game, is it, or basketball game, or
No,
whatever.
he's missing the baseball.
Is it baseball?
Yeah, it's baseball he's going to go to.
Right. So there you go. Just something I picked up a long time ago, and I've never forgotten it, how important it was. Because every time I watched the film, I watched for those windows getting bigger. And they do. You just don't notice it because it's so unexpected. Why would you be looking for that? You know. So there you are. Right, let's get to what some people regard as the most important thing, and that's the direction. Sansa, what would you say about the direction of this film? Do you think it was, and I'll give you three classifications to guide you, was it very well directed, or directed?
I think it was very well directed, but then again, Sidney Lumet would have been in the infancy of his career. You know, he wouldn't have been the big Oscar winner. I don't know. I don't believe he would have been in 1957. However, because the playwright's there and probably getting input from, you know, the various stage people who probably worked on that production, who would have also been involved in this film production, he probably would have took cues from them. So I think the direction for me is, and it might have been, I don't know if this was, once again, I don't know if this would have been input from, you know, a really adept editor, but a certain sentence would be said, for instance, and they would cut to a particular character where the inference was what they said previously was a pile of crap, or, you know, and just to see what their reaction was like, you know, getting the nose put out, that kind of thing, which was very clever.
Yeah.
When the direction required claustrophobia, in other words, close in, pent up, it was there, but also the wider shots. One in particular that I liked was when, you know, the token racist in this instance was Ed Begley. Although I don't think there was much love lost on a few of the other characters, but he was the token racist. And he's trying to sort of argue his cause, and then they all sort of one by one get up and sort of stand away from the table with the back towards him. That was a
Yeah,
very, very telling moment in the film. So
absolutely. Yeah,
I I would say it was very well directed. Obviously, how much of that was down to Lumet, how much was that down to influence from the various people who were involved with the stage production and or the editor, I don't know. But obviously Fonda himself, he's no slouch when it comes to um, being on the other side of the camera. Not necessarily a prolific director, but he knew his way around.
yeah,
And
yeah.
he also would have been, if rumors are right, Fonda always used to like to see the cuts of films, like when cutaways, etc., were done, particularly in scenes that he was in.
Uh-huh.
Not just to make himself look good, but just if he thought it worked or it didn't work, and he would have
Some
arguments,
something to say about it.
respectful, yeah,
Yeah.
respectful discussions with the editors and the directors to say, well, do you not think that this cut works better?
Mm.
And 9 times out of 10, he would get his way, and it wasn't just because he was an A-list Hollywood star.
Mm.
So that's just my opinion, anyway.
You know, he bought that material. You know that?
Yeah, like I say, the first time I saw it, when I sort of twigged, was when I saw he produced it, because that wasn't something I'd noticed before. Similarly, with Sidney Lumet, I hadn't realised he directed it either.
Mm. Yeah. And when you think of the scene that you spoke about, the how do you show 11 characters being totally disgusted by one character in a very closed environment? How do you do that? And starting with nothing. I mean, that's a difficult thing to come up with. How do you show that visually? And the answer to it is just simple genius, really. It's so simple how they do it, just by each one of the other characters turning their back one by one. But the thing I didn't pay attention to, and I wonder if anyone else has, was there any particular order to them turning their back? Or was it as random as we might think?
It seemed to, for me, if I recollect right, the pattern seemed to be sort of anti-clockwise away from the Ed Begley character. So they seemed to go anti-clockwise one at a time and sort of turn their back and look out the window or look at the board on the wall. But each one of them got up and showed their back to Begley, as much to say, I disagree with your
Yeah,
statement there completely.
yeah. But it's a very interesting solution to the problem, really, in
Yeah,
terms of drama. You know,
yeah.
wonder how many other directors would have come up with that idea.
And another thing that I noticed, and I don't know if this is one of these magical movie tricks like the rain thing, but I mean, I picked up on it, was if they wanted to, and once again, I don't know how much of this was, well, this is film direction, so I would imagine this was Sidney Lumet's little accent, if you like. If he wanted to portray space, so in other words, to give each character a bit of space, everything was shot from above. So if you remember that scene, what we've just been talking about, it was
Yeah,
shot from sort of above and away from the table to
yeah,
give that sense of space. And yet when there was a particular pinch point or moment or bit of dialogue, the filming was almost done below shoulder level. So the filming was done, they
hmm,
sat around the table, the filming was done below shoulder level, sort of looking up towards them to give, and that gives a very claustrophobic feel because you don't really see any sense of the room at all.
yeah,
So
yeah, exactly. Especially effective then with the actors who whose back is facing those damn windows that are getting bigger. It doesn't work for the other side of the room. It only works for the side of the room where the windows are. Interesting. Magic Man, what would you think of the direction? Would you think it
Well,
was? Oh, hello. He's put the camera on, so you all know who he is now. If you didn't already know who he was, this is my son.
the direction was rather good considering this was his first feature film. So to come up with that, it was pretty impressive. Looking at the cinematographer, he would later win an Oscar for another film. So obviously, he had a good crew with him as well. And as people have said already, Fonda would certainly put in his two pence to come up with suggestions and ideas to improve the film. So it was very impressive. Yeah, definitely.
Becky, would you go along with that, or have I already asked you? I can't remember now.
I guess so. The thing is that it was a movie that was directed on a stage play, basically.
Yeah.
And he was using whatever techniques he could think of to make the stage play work out as a movie. And he used a lot of really interesting and cool techniques. So I'm going to say that just by default, like, no, it was all of my own personal hang-ups, I guess. Like, no, it was really well done. The execution was just fantastic. There's no way around that. And I do think that it's worth studying, if only for that alone. Like, he set out with a goal and he swung for the fences. And I think that in terms of what was intended to be accomplished, no, it really worked out very well. So,
And we shouldn't ever forget that each one of those main individuals, actor or not, would have seen that stage play at least once, if not more than once, and used it as a memory reference, I would imagine.
even if they didn't see the stage play, even if they never read the stage play, the themes leap out at you. From a writing standpoint, the movie is really, really good. You know who the characters are, you know what the conflict is, you understand the conflicts between the characters. Again, you've got Henry Fonda is the moral center of the movie,
Of course.
and the immigrant, the I can't remember the guy's name, but there's let me go back to the Wikipedia page. Apologies.
Yeah, that's George Vescovich, Juror 11.
Yes, George Vescovich. Yes. Yeah, that guy. This is going to sound kind of weird, so take it for whatever you will. Oh gosh. Okay, just a little bit of historicity, just for a moment, the majority of the Russian and Ashkenazi came over in like the 1890s or whatever. In fact, one of the actors, let me see if I can figure out which one it is. He was one of the John Fiedler. No, it wasn't John Fiedler. Who was it? Binns? Was it Binns? No, it wasn't Binns. Which one was it? One of them was actually a literal guy whose family came over into America. Klugman, Jack Klugman.
Oh, yeah.
His family was actually they were Russian Jews that came over in the 1890s, and the character of George Voskovich, he is basically a sub-in for that entire group that came in the 1890s. So there was kind of a hey, look, we're just like you, or whatever. So there was like a lot of there were multiple layers going on all at the same time in that movie, and it would have been meaningful not only to the writer but also to at least one of the actors, and it was referenced within one of the characters. Uh, and that character, let's see here, Voskovich. I didn't look up Voskovich at all.
Yeah, he's of Czech origin.
Okay, fair enough, fair enough. So at any rate, the thing is that even though he is not one of the ones that came over in the 1890s, his character would have been a reference to the ones that came over in the 1890s, which would have been the background family of Klugman, which would have been, if I recall correctly, the background of Lumet as well.
You think that was deliberate? You
What's
really
that?
think that's? Do you think all of what you're saying was actually deliberately done?
100%.
Yeah, really.
100%. And I think that it's reflected in the competency of the direction and the acting as well. So, take what I'm saying with a grain of salt, obviously. I'm I'm kind of pulling at a lot of things all at once to create a little bit of a tapestry, a little bit of a web here. At the same time, these elements are present. So even if the actors did not actually watch any of the plays, even if they had never read the text from the play, even if they had only read just the script for the movie, the other actors and the directors, they had some of these themes and ideas in mind. And you can even go one step further. Noahide, the 7 Noahide laws, and one of them is to set up courts. This is a court drama. This is completely in line with 7 Noahide laws thematically. So like it's got a lot of layers going on all at the same time. So yeah, 100% intentional, and it was reflected, in my opinion, very well in the text in terms of representation of themes.
So if I were to say to you, if I took that same screenplay and didn't change a word and gave it to 12 different actors who were not tribal members, and gave it to a director who was more than competent, who was also not a tribal member, would we get a different result?
Yes. And my reason for saying this is because M. Night Shyamalan recently put out a movie. Hold on one second. M. Night. I forget the name of the movie. I have to look it up. Knock at the Cabin. M. Night Shyamalan recently put out a movie called Knock at the Cabin, and that was based on a novel that was written by, let me see if I can find it. I have to go, I haven't thought about this in like a month and a half. So, whatever. But, Knock at the Cabin, there we are. Based on a book by, if I could just figure out the name of the novel. Okay. Cabin at the End of the Woods. Okay, fine. And that one is by American writer Paul Tremblay. All you have to do is look at Paul Tremblay, and you can understand what I'm going for here. In the book that Knock at the Cabin was based on, that book had an extremely dark ending, and it was something to the effect of the world. I'm going to spoil it, so it doesn't matter. No one's going to watch the movie, so it actually doesn't matter. In the novel, the world goes to crap, and you end up with the two protagonists trying to figure out how to survive in this horrible, corrupt world or whatever. In my estimation, and I'm serious about this too, so take me again with another grain of salt and perhaps a shot of tequila. It's my belief that this is fundamentally a religious theme in nature. That's my actual belief. Because what you have, it's a book written by a tribal member who has a story about a corrupt and evil world, and a small minority of people are deciding to live amongst the evil anyway, in the face of evil or whatever. Meanwhile, the movie, directed by M. Night Shyamalan, not a tribal member, he decided to go in the exact opposite direction. And by that I mean, he decided that the world was not going to be an evil thing. And he decided that the characters, they were actually going to. That's right. In the novel, there is a rejection of self-sacrifice, and I've seen this theme pop up more than once. For whatever reason, Canaanites are not into self-sacrifice. Meanwhile, non-Canaanites have a tendency to regard self-sacrifice as being heroic and noble. And within M. Night Shyamalan's version of this story, self-sacrifice was involved. And I listened to this on NPR, so I'm cribbing a lot. So you can probably hear a better version of this if you decide to listen to NPR, our version of BBC. The author of the novel, if I recall correctly, he was actually upset at M. Night Shyamalan's version of events, the resolution within the movie, because it didn't adhere to his original story, which was to again to suffer and persevere in the face of evil and corruption or whatever it is. This is antithetical to M. Night Shyamalan's conception of, no, we're going to be okay. We're going to be okay, and we don't have to accept an evil and corrupt world. And if I have to take a hit for the team, by gum, I'm going to do it. And I'm going to make sure that everyone's okay. And the author of the novel did not like that. So, in answer to your question, would this source text given to non-Canaanites in terms of actors and directors, would it be different? Absolutely. 100%. Yes, it would completely be different. 100%. And I can even say that with regards to what I even said about the character of Cobb, and I forget the other guy's name, but the one where everyone turned their back on the guy who was like more racist or whatever.
Yeah,
Once
exactly.
you put the same materials into a person's hands who understands these along lines that are not purely a combination of religious and ideological, you will get different results, guaranteed.
Would anybody disagree with what our friend Eki is saying? Does everyone understand?
No, I was just going to say I'd have to understand it to agree. So,
Okay.
I'll...
Magic Man, how do you feel?
Well, all I know about it is that the writer is born and bred in New York, and it's set in New York, so there's a heavy New York theme. So obviously, if you change the setting and characters, the feel will definitely be different. As to what Ike was saying, I have no idea about that. I'll trust his knowledge on that and agree with him.
Well, I think if you take any material and give it to two different directors, you're going to get two different results, regardless of any group affiliations within the entire cast, shall we say, those on stage and those off stage. I think that's fairly obvious to me, because I've tried writing experiments to to either prove or disprove those ideas to myself. Um, so the real question from that, I think, is it important? Is it important to you, Eki, that those elements in the original film are there, or are they not important?
Yes, I think they're important. And the reason that I think that they're important is because I have a thesis, a general thesis. I'm kind of lifting off of Joseph Campbell here. So, you can go ahead and roll your eyes at me. I have no problem with that. But the core idea is that mythology is important. The stories that we tell ourselves are how we relate to the world. And, proper conduct, improper conduct, good decision making, bad decision making, and how you frame conflicts, how you frame situations, and so on. These things actually do matter a lot. So it's my opinion that movies basically are propaganda. There's good propaganda and bad propaganda. Hey, I'm not gonna lie. I freaking love the movie Aliens, Aliens 1986, Alien 1979. Are they propaganda? Yeah, they are. Can I tell you about the themes? Yeah, I sure can. And I can go down the line, just pick a movie out of the hat. If I've seen it, I can probably tell you a lot of the embedded themes that a person is supposed to integrate into their worldview or whatever. And you can see the exact same thing in 12 Angry Men. They rail against prejudice and implicitly, I don't think they use the word racism or racist in the movie, I don't think. But the theme is there, in as much as they refer to those people. And
Yeah,
those
that word
types.
is not used. That word is not used.
Which one?
Racist. You don't use that word.
Yeah, so I should have watched it more than once. I only watched it once. I kind of feel bad about that. But the thing is that, yeah, like the movie sets up for what would later become an attack against racists. And this is shown very clearly with the, I don't know if they use the word bigot, but whatever, I know they use prejudice. I know for a fact they use the word prejudice. It sets up for thinking along lines of this group versus that group. And the people that are in the movie 12 Angry Men, if I recall correctly, I should have watched it a second time, that's my own fault. If I recall correctly, the ones that were the most likely to be prejudiced were the ones who were normal white Americans, portrayed as normal white Americans. Whether the actors were or were not is a separate issue. But the way that they were portrayed, they would have been normal white Americans. The implication on a very subtle level is that normal Americans, if they have judgments, any negative judgments for outgroup, they are bad and they should be rejected. Hence the turning of backs and whatnot. So it's an extremely subtle cue, but it is present. And while I do technically agree that one should be level-headed and fair in their assessment of a person, regarding just the general facts of the matter, and I do actually even agree that group affiliation should not take center stage, should not be the focus of a judgment. I also think that making that the focus, that is to say, rendering negative judgments based solely on group affiliation, the fact that the filmmakers focused on that is in itself notable. And this is why I come back to Cobb so much, because the only thing that he had to support his point was, I don't care what you say, I believe what I believe. That's not convincing in the least. There is nothing compelling about that line of thinking. It's not even an argument.
No.
So I would say that yes, the themes and the elements within the movie are important because they do set up for a person who is not thinking as, I can get a little bit much, and I do understand that, so I apologize for it. But a person who isn't going into such elaborate and idiotic detail as myself, if they're just taking things at face value, they could very easily end up accepting ideas that would end up hurting them later on. All you have to do is just consider for a moment all of this talk about, oh my gosh, more racism or whatever. Okay, fine. So that all started back in what, the 60s, 70s or whatever? Look at where we are now. What happened? A lot of people took in those ideas back in the 60s and the 70s. And now look at where America is. Look at where Europe is. Look at where England and Scotland are now, based on accepting ideas without thinking them through.
Sure. There is one other aspect of all of this, of course, and I think it gets lost, especially in the kind of thoughts that you're putting forward, Eki. And that is, if we accept this piece of fiction as being a piece of reality, what is overlooked and squashed into the background, almost disappears, is as a person has been murdered and there is no murderer to be found. And that is never addressed. That aspect's never addressed.
No, you're right. I thought about that very briefly, but only for a moment, and then I forgot about that also. Just, yep. You don't even know
And
if the
that's
guy
where
did
it
it.
ends. I mean, we're supposed to accept that as a definitive ending. You know, they all come away satisfied. They have done their thing. But there's a dead man and there's a murderer
You can also
hanging about New York someplace, you know?
okay,
Whether he's a part of that in group that you're talking about or he isn't, doesn't really matter. He's
yeah,
still on the loose.
fundamentally, a guy got murdered and the murderer is still out there, and you end on a
Correct.
happy note, and it's like, wait a minute, hold on a second.
Yeah, well, that's the point I'm making.
Yeah,
And let me tell you that, you know where I got that from, that whole proposition. You'll never guess. I give you a million guesses. I got that whole thing from my mother, who happened to be on a juror, served as a jury member in a Glasgow court for murder. And she would not allow any of them to move her from the position that there was a dead boy in the cemetery and a murderer loose. Because that was what was going to be missed. Just like the way we're talking here, that murderer is still on the loose, and there's a man dead, that boy's father, and there's no one accountable or responsible. And the police seem to, if we take it to its logic conclusion, the police seem to have wrapped it all up, and they're quite happy with what they've got. And will the case be opened after the verdict? You know, there's a lot of uncomfortable stuff comes from the proposition that Henry Ford, or Henry Fonda rather, is a good guy doing good things.
there's also there's a a related theme about that, which is I've decided recently that when I'm addressing things to people who are either neophytes or the uninitiated, a person who does not understand things the way that I understand them, I like to make a delineation, a division. My line of demarcation is between narrative versus reality. Okay, in the narrative, we're gonna focus on 12 Angry Men for just a moment. In the narrative of 12 Angry Men, they were appointed to seek justice, and the justice that they settled on was that they couldn't prove that the kid murdered someone. That's the justice. Done. Situation handled. The narrative. What's the narrative? The narrative is we are going to seek justice. We are going to interrogate the facts until we reach a conclusion, which, by the way, is extraordinarily Talmudic. And on the other hand, going toward reality. What's the reality of the situation? Precisely what you just said. There is still a freaking murderer out there. In some sense, you can almost regard the movie as a tragedy because the only thing that happened was some poor kid was put up on a chair and is harangued for several days, and a bunch of guys had to get into a deadlock conversation for like an entire night. They had their weeks ruined. The judge had his week ruined, so on and so forth. Meanwhile, that poor kid's father is dead, and there's still a murderer on the loose.
Yes.
Ending on a high note for that movie is like, what are you talking about, bro? Narrative versus reality. In the movie, they focused on narrative. They resolved the narrative. They're great. Totally ignoring the reality of the situation.
Yeah. Yeah, because even in terms of the music at the end is uplifting as well. Everyone comes out, we assume, we only see two of them. They come out with this feeling of, well, that was a good job I did there. I did something good. I did something worthwhile. Overlooking, as you say, as I said, a dead man and a murderer who is not yet caught, perhaps never will be caught, and not necessarily a member of any group. So there's different ways to look at that. And I always thought it was interesting to look at it from the point of view of, well, who is the murderer? What was the motive? Was there a motive? Did that man who was killed, did he actually owe a lot of money to somebody? Was it one of these mob things? Who knows? All sorts of explanations could be put forward. But we don't hear any of that. We only hear one side. The prosecution side is all we ever hear. That's a weakness there as well. It's set up for that ending. It was not set up as a proper intellectual discussion between various character types. What do you think, Sansom? Am I talking baloney here, or can you see the point I'm making?
No, yeah, because the victim, sort of the victim, if you like, because all of the focus on the defendant, but there's not really, which is the job of the jury. So that's what the focus is. But like I say, it's quite. Does it ever come up? I know that Henry Fonda says, well, it's just circumstantial. It could have been this and could have that, but I don't think apart from when they're talking about the knife dropping out of the pocket and some rando picking it up and then just mysteriously going to the exact house where the owner of that knife is and stabbing the father character.
Yeah.
But it never really comes up as a question because obviously they've listened to the prosecution and the defense, and at least 10 of them, because I reckon the Jack Klugman character, he's just going along with the main crowd to start with, doesn't want to rock the boat sort of thing. But I reckon, at least 10 of them thought that he was the victim, but not one of them, when Henry Fonda started to question things, not one of them sort of said, well, if not him, then who?
Yeah, it never comes up.
No, which they wouldn't obviously be privy to. But once again, that's not the problem for the jury. The jury is to, beyond reasonable doubt, acquit or prosecute or find guilty or innocent the accused. If the accused is found not guilty, then it's back to the police and the what they call district attorney in that area to reinvestigate the case. And I'm certain there have been travesties where, a lot of people who have been guilty have gotten away with it. But even if it's just to show perfunctory compliance, when that does happen, then the police will open up a supplementary case to reinvestigate, because essentially it's still an unsolved crime. But especially, and that must rankle particularly when cases are dismissed on technicalities, like a search was illegal or something of that nature. That must rankle the authorities no end. But like I say, there's not really a lot of like I say, the one omission, if you like, is the fact that nobody comes out and says, well, if not him, then who?
Yeah.
But really, at the end of the day, that would just be rhetorical, because it's not really the focus of what they're there to do. Their job as jury is to find the accused guilty or not guilty. Beyond that, it's not, once again, certainly, judges in this country, and this is true, especially if it's a serious crime and there's a jury involved. Let's just say the bloke in the dock's got tattoos all over his head and, looks like a pin cushion. The judge will actually say, please don't let any sort of suppositions or, anything about, suppositions about the defendant's character sway your decision one way or the other. You've got to take it based on the facts alone. And essentially that's what it should be, but that's part and parcel of being. I mean, I've never been on jury duty, and I never will do it. Put it that way. I'll always get out of it because I wouldn't do it. And it's dead easy. Everybody goes like, I don't know, so I don't want to do this one. I go, you're dead easy to get out of it. When they question you to get out of jury duty, just say, well, I'm just going to assume that they're guilty and work backwards from that. You're out of there straight away.
I get out of it due to age. I said I didn't think I would be able to spend that length of time, or a potentially long period of time, listening to lots of information and process it. So I pleaded a fading mind due to age and got myself out of it. Magic Man, have you got any thoughts on what we're talking about here? This possibility of there's still a victim and there's still a perpetrator.
Yeah, well, obviously the conclusion of the film, the assumption is made that they'll deliver that verdict to the judge in the courtroom. And the police will then be looking for another suspect. But as we've already discussed, the point of the film isn't to talk about another person. It's purely about this boy. Did he do it or not? And once they determine that, that's for someone else to consider. But it is a valid point. Obviously, you could say it's dialogue that should be there, perhaps, but again, maybe just be for the time period itself, and they don't want to distract the audience with discussing that. They just want to say, right, we were going to talk about this plot point, the knife, the glasses, and what have you. So to discuss another character that we know nothing about would have been too much. It would have detracted from the film, and it would have made it, for me, it would have made it a worse film. The joke point you could have is that later on in the future, you have Klugman playing with Quincy, and he could track down the killer on that TV show. But that would have been perhaps a wee bit facetious. So.
Very good. Okay, it's just it's something that's always bubbled at the back of my own mind because, mainly because of this experience of my mother in that High Court in Glasgow, and she wouldn't let them away with talking about other things. She would always drag them back to it. Now I don't know what the outcome of any of that was. Never asked, and perhaps she was wrong to do what she was doing. Perhaps the whole point of a jury is, like you say, it's all about innocent or guilty on the defendant. Everything else should be irrelevant to that, and perhaps that's where my mother was completely in the wrong. But I think it would be valid to bring it up at least once at that point, and we don't hear it even once. It could have easily been brought up and just as easily dismissed by any of the characters. And
I think if it was going to come up, the only point in the film where you could have squeezed in some of that would be as they're putting on their jackets and getting ready to leave the room. It could, maybe you could hear some characters discussing it amongst themselves. It's like, well, now that we've decided that the boys have not done it, I wonder who did. Have one of the characters say to another. That would perhaps be the only time that discussion would fit the film, I would feel.
Yeah, I would agree that would tend to satisfy that itch, and it really wouldn't really matter who was saying it because it's left as an open question then.
Yeah.
For the audience watching the film. Yeah, it would have worked there. Yeah, I would agree with that. Does anybody disagree with that idea?
All the jurors basically walked out saying, "Not my job, not my problem." Yeah, I agree with the assessment.
Okay. Sansom, you got anything to add to that?
No, mate, that's a fair appraisal in my opinion. Absolutely, 100%. I would agree with that, yeah.
Okay. Well, look, folks, I don't think there's much more that we can squeeze out of this great film. I think we've done quite a decent job on it. Unfortunately, William forgot all about it and didn't watch, which is a real pity. I hope he does watch it though. So, who's next to pick? Sansom, can you remember? Who comes
Yes, I
after
do.
me?
It's actually Eki.
It's
And
Eki.
yeah, and he's got a few categories to select from. So we've still got available action, biopic, comedy, documentary, fantasy, horror, sci-fi, sports, and western.
So there you go, Eki. Plenty to choose from.
In fact, I'll do the reverse of that. There's only drama, which is 12 Angry Men, and thriller, which was my pick, which was Gorky Park, that isn't available. So
there you go. So,
All right, so at
I
the
was
moment,
hoping it was going to be William's turn, so that Manjin could pick for him. Pick some real nasty, silent 19. Pick Metropolis for him.
One of my favorite films. One of my
It's
favorite
great, isn't
films.
it? It is a brilliant film, yeah.
I love it.
But
I'm in the
William, he's
minority.
in,
I prefer the colonized version from Mordor.
I like the Spanish cut. Did you ever see the 3-hour one that was like some Spanish, or certainly Spanish on the
No.
in the I mean the subtitles are English, but it was some kind of Spanish rehash of it, or not a rehash, but a remaster, shall I say?
Yeah.
But I was hoping that
So.
you'd pick that, and then you could get that would have been classic, because for all these Mr. Sci-Fi and technocracy and the global agenda and the elites and that. So when we mentioned Metropolis and what it was about, he wrinkled his bloody nose, like,
yeah.
no, doesn't sound like me. It's all
No Metropolis. You've got no C3PO.
Yeah, exactly. So it's exactly the kind of crap you're into. It just happens to be 100 years old or so. And he wrinkled his nose. How very dare him wrinkle his nose. Anyway, sorry, Eki. Yeah.
Well, it's your choice then, Eki, and obviously you don't have to make it tonight. But
well, that takes a little pressure off me. That's good.
yeah, well, it's not always a good. Some of us, like I had, definitely wanted to do 12 Angry Men, so I didn't need time to consider it. But in your case, I knew you would want to have time to consider it, what you're going to choose. So you take that time. Don't take too long, of course.
I'll have the best pick possible by the 18th of next month.
Very specific.
Is there any titles that you're considering that you want to mention right now?
I don't have any specific titles. I was actually thinking in terms of directors, and so the openings that interest me are fantasy, horror, and sci-fi. Because we are at the tail end of October now, by reflex action, I'm just thinking about horror. So obviously, this is the direction that I want to go. But if I was going to go for something, if I was going to go for fantasy, strangely, I actually have. It's a stretch, but I would say that either Lost Highway or Mulholland Drive count as fantasy, and so I would go. That would be one direction that I would think about going. For my own reasons, I would count them as being fantasy, but that's for personal reasons. But again, I love fantasy and horror and sci-fi. Like those are my three favorite genres, bar none. So that's obviously the direction that I want to go. And then for sci-fi, I mean, come on, anything produced by James Cameron, you just want to say yes to that. So.
Okay. We'll agree to disagree.
Fair enough.
Right, so you've got next choice.
Let me qualify that. I want to qualify that. Okay.
Okay.
Pre 2010s James Cameron. Okay, there. All right.
Yeah,
okay.
no Avatar. No, yeah.
Okay.
I didn't like Avatar.
Wow.
So,
Well, that's a big dislike because it's a big film.
no, I know. I didn't like Titanic either. It's like, okay, no, I get it. Like the boat sinks and it's tragic. Okay, fine.
There was no tragedy in it. There was no suspense in it. We know what happens to the boat.
Well,
the
the tragedy is supposed to be like, oh my gosh, she was so in love with that dude, and then he just like fell into the sea. What a bummer.
Oh,
It's
yeah,
like,
yeah.
all right.
She let him die.
The alternative title for Avatar was Dances in Space.
Nah.
It sounds about right. Yeah.
So instead of dancing, it literally was Dances with Wolves in space, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Avatar.
Yeah. Yeah,
Oh
totally.
yeah,
Totally.
absolutely,
But with the set
absolutely.
design of aliens.
So you've got first choice on whatever you're going to do here, Eki, and once you've decided, obviously send me an email and make sure, of course, it's available for everyone to watch. It's always the guiding light has to be available for everyone.
I'll
So
make sure that I can. I will go through what's on YouTube because there's actually a lot of movies on YouTube. So I'll go
Doesn't
through
have
those.
to be YouTube, Becky. If it's on Free Couch Tuner, I use that.
But can you link those in the chat here so that I can take a look at those sites?
Yeah, give me a sec.
I'll let Eki do this. He's better at this sort of thing than I am. The free couch tuner is brilliant. It's a great site. I use it quite a lot myself. In fact, I checked that 12
There
Angry
you go,
Men
mate.
were on there.
Put it this way, Eki. Any of the films that you're thinking of are all on there.
Fair
Yeah.
enough.
So you only need that one site.
Okay, then I will make sure that whatever I pick is going to be
On there.
off of that site.
Well, that makes life a lot easier for all of us, especially the rest of the audience. You know, if they want to join in.
All right, so yeah, I'm gonna focus on probably fantasy horror, to be honest. But that's just because I happen to like the genres.
Okay.
Maybe I'm a simpleton, but whatever.
Fantasy horror, that will be something like the Royal Family.
Yeah, there you go.
There you are. That'll do.
Dune, but set on Earth.
Yeah, why not? Done set on Earth. How about that? Even better. Right, I've only got one last question for you. Not just for the reviewers, although we've got a missing reviewer. We've got two reviewers and we have our audience, and I want to ask the question, which I'm going to ask. Who would like to see our special guest return as a regular guest?
Gets a vote from me, defo.
Don't
Especially if Willie No Show's not going to turn up. You know what I mean?
Well, I didn't want to make it sound as though that was the ultimatum, because it's not. It's not. It's just a thought. You know, I've tried to get him on here for ages, but he's always shied away from it. This was his idea, not mine. But obviously, I've got no objection if you folk in the chat have got no objection to having him back as a guest. Maybe not necessarily all the time. It'll be up to him. I would leave it up to him. So you've got no objections. What about you, Eke?
No, heck yeah, of course.
Okay.
As far as I'm concerned, the more the merrier. I'm all about it.
Okay. Well, there's Packer giving us a lead by saying yes to magic. So if you're in the chat and you like the idea of having Magic Man here, then put a 2 in the chat and we'll know that's what you're all wanting to. Okay, doke. A 2 in the chat, Steve, not a 1, a 2. That's the idea, Toffee. Thank you. I think you're going to get an overwhelming invitation here, my boy. But as I said, if you don't want to take it up every month, you don't have to. It'll be up to you. Just thought I'd.
Yeah. No, I like talking about films,
I know.
particularly ones that I've seen and enjoy. I know some of the ones that you've had in the past I've personally not been interested in. So that's why I've never appeared. But particularly with this one, it was like, yeah, I'd like to pop on.
Well, you could take the same attitude then. How about that? If it's a movie that you're interested in, know about, and want to speak about, then you're welcome to join us. If not, don't worry about it. You know, we all tend to pick films that we like. You would get a choice, of course. I don't know where would that fit in our cycle of choices, Sensor?
What was that?
Because
Sorry.
we consider you to be first. You go first. Then I usually go after you, which is second. Then we have Eki, who's third, and then we have William, who's fourth. Is that correct?
Let me just double check. So it was William, Eki. So yeah, Eki, William, yeah. Yeah, it looks that way, mate. Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Right. So that would mean then, Magic Man, that you would come last, so to speak. But you get a choice.
Yeah.
But the way we do it now is we have the genres. So when it gets to you, you would have certain genres not available to you.
No, that would be interesting. Yeah.
That's the way we do it now. It means that we're not covering the same kind of material over and over again to try and suit our chat audience here. And it seems so far, I think, to be working out reasonably well. Would you agree, Sensum, that it's working out reasonably well, this idea of using the genre?
Well, it certainly mixes it up a bit because we can only have one pick per series, if you like. But it also makes especially when the categories start getting a little bit thin on the ground, it certainly starts to make people think a little bit more about the choices. Like I know for a fact that, and he won't mind me saying this, that William really struggled with the fantasy one, but he came up with a pretty reasonable stabbing End of Days. I like that film. It's not a bad film. You can say it's sci-fi or action if you wanted to, but fantasies, it's certainly along that sort of lines. But it makes you think, and like you say, because you could just randomly pick great films, but by having a specific category or as a choice from a specific category, it sort of focuses your mind because you want to. I always like to pick something that I know is going to be good, but not necessarily hackneyed. In other words, let's pick Empire Strikes Back. I mean, don't get me wrong. I think that's a great film. That's probably my favorite Star Wars film out of the entire series. But there's not really a lot to talk about there, because everybody's seen it. It's not, it's a great film and all that. But I like to pick films which I think are either enjoyable, or make you think. So if you think about the film that I don't know, I can't remember what William said, but if you think about that film that Eki picked for sci-fi the last time, about Stalker. Yeah, Stalker.
Yeah.
That was I'd heard about it, but I'd never seen it before. And it was really thought provoking. So, yeah, really good film. Well, different, very different.
Yeah. I'm going to change the subject here because I put up a comment made by Toffee, which is rather disturbing. It says Streaky Bacon. He's passed away, unfortunately.
I think they might be talking. They're not talking about Streaky Bacon. Streaky's in the chat. They might be talking about gammon sandwich. Is that toffee? I didn't see the chat.
Yeah, it's toffee. He says, oh, yeah, I see what you mean. He's talking to Streaky Bacon.
Yeah.
Ah, it's my reading of what toffee is saying.
Yeah, Streaky Bacon takes too much adrenochrome, so.
So he's dead, is he?
Gammon sandwich, yeah, he was poorly. Yeah, so.
Oh, God, that's awful. I'm sorry to hear that, because he was quite regular on here as well as other people's. That's sad. Do you know if he was a young or old man?
I never spoke to him in person, so I don't know, to be honest.
Likewise, that's awful. William, okay. Right, folks, I'm going to bring on the outro music. So we may have 5 movie reviewers next time at the end of next month. And we may not. So that's another intriguing thing we can wait for and find out if happens. But I don't know about anyone else, but I've got to say that I have really enjoyed tonight's live stream. It's such a great film. There's so much can be said about it. We could go on for quite a long time. So I want to thank everyone for coming in the chat. It's great to see you all here. Streaky's saying that Gammon was in his mid-50s. He was so excited by his first grandchild being born last year. Oh, he was a clued up top guy, top boy, and I am proud to have spoken to a great man. That's really tragic. I'm sorry to hear that. What can you say? Not a lot more. Well, I'm sure he's enjoying the right side of the spirit world, and he'll be doing his best to help us out on that side once he gets his feet and understands the rules. So anyway, I'm going to set off the music in a minute or two, but I'm going to start with Magic Man and say, have you got any last words you would like to say, my friend? My son? My son?
My father. Thanks everyone for tuning in tonight, for welcoming me in, and it was fun. It was fun, and hopefully I'll be back, depending upon what's coming up next for Mickey.
Okay, Doc. I shall now remove you from the live stream. You don't have to go away. You can hang around. There'll likely be a bit of chat. Okay, Doc. Eki, last words.
I guess just remember to floss. It seems pretty important. And yeah, I guess that's really that's about it. Oh yeah, you can fight the forces of evil with God on your side, or you can fight the forces of evil without God on your side. I know my choice. Again, floss. The end.
Okay. I'll take you from the stream. William, would you like to say a few words before we close the stream up?
Yeah, probably sorry would be a good start.
I hope you don't feel offended by the invitation that I've extended to a
Not
fifth?
at all. Not at all, John. That's actually a good idea. I think even another person might be good, but obviously we don't want to overdo it energy-wise with yourself.
Well, you've got 5 people, which theoretically should encourage discussion and disagreement to some extent, in
Yeah.
theory.
Mm,
So it may
cool.
work very well on that level, if no other level.
Yeah, but hey, I got on, and we can have a chat
Sure.
in the green room as well. But hello to everyone, and then goodbye, I suppose. So, and I do apologize. It sounded like a quite a interesting movie, and another good review. So hopefully
Well,
I can. Do you know what? Actually, I reckon because maybe you've not been streaming,
uh-huh.
that usually keeps me in check.
Yeah.
So because I've not had a lot of time either, I've not been on that much.
Have
So
you not? Okay.
it's went
If
out my
you've
mind.
never been off, there's more. You've got more videos than bloody Blockbuster. What's going on?
Yeah, but in the way of live streaming, I've not really been on. That usually I get reminded by the likes of Linda. Linda, she'll remind me, or someone might remind me, but obviously I've not had the time. So hey, I hold my hands up and I apologize, but yeah, I'll definitely make sure I've got it marked down.
Yeah, please give it a watch. It is well worth a watch. You will not, I hope, be disappointed. All
Yeah,
right?
I'll check it out. Cool.
Please do. Okay, doc. And we will remove William. That just leaves your good self, Sensor. Last famous words.
Great film. I thought it was well. It was a pleasure to re-watch it again. I have watched it like yourself, John, several times over. It's a film that you can watch again and again because it is so good and the performances are so good. For my troubles, I'm doing a double edit tomorrow night with DJ. We're doing the 8 o'clock stream, keeping the seat warm for Bonnie Lad, and then at 10:30 we're back over on 42's channel for the end of the month. 3 Men Walked Into a Bar stream. So that's you're going to get a double dose of nonsense tomorrow night.
Okay, okay.
But yeah, so for me, it was a solid 9. There you go, John. Great choice.
Fine. I forgot to ask that one, but we'll let it go. I would give it at least a 9 myself in terms of nothing to 10. Great film, of course. And thanks again, Sensum, for being here. Always interesting contributions from yourself and everyone else, of course. So, folks, I'll have a few words now and then I'll leave you in peace. Depending on what happens treatment wise this week, if everything goes well, which I expect it to do, I would hope to then the following week start live streaming again, but on a much, much reduced program, probably once a week on a Tuesday, if I can manage it. And we'll see what happens from there. But obviously, one way or the other, there will be a movie review live stream at the end of the month, as I have been doing. But as I say, if my treatment goes well and there is no unexpected consequences, then I hope to start a live stream on a Tuesday, and we'll take it from there. But for the moment, it's au revoir, adios, cheerio, and until next time, goodbye for now. Enjoy the music. Thank you for being here. Take care of yourself. And don't forget all these other shows over the weekend if you're that way inclined. So it's bye for now. Bye. Enjoy.
Silently the snow falls, paints a winter scene, swiftly spreads the dark rim, hides a fading autumn green. Moonbeams brush the dark wood, conjure friendships dear to me. Lightly now the breeze flows, disturbing more than just the leaves. But life's much more than we can know. We are one small glow in the eternal flow. Patiently the love grows, lifts the weary heart. Gently now she holds me, melts two worlds once apart. Moonbeams brush the dark wood, usher dreams of you and me. Softly then the breeze blows, disturbing more than just the trees.
All together now.
But love's much more
More
than we can know.
than we could ever possibly know.
We are one small glow
But a very important
in the
glow.
eternal flow. Melodies of long ago, songs of innocence, harmonies to soothe the soul, past of consequence. Moonbeams brush the dark wood, awakening joys of you and me. Silently the snow falls, bringing winter symphony.
All together now.
But we're much
So
more
much more
than we can
than we could
know.
ever possibly know.
We are one small glow
But a very, very important
in
glow.
the eternal flow. But life's much more than we can know. We are one small glow in the eternal flow.
So you all take care. Enjoy the rest of your weekend. And hopefully I will see you very soon. Thanks once more for being here. Bye just now.